that's why your listing
fine.
agreement needs to have that variable rate language if you rep both sides. So
There you go.
variable rate, all
And that,
the bananas go to the listing broker.
just to
So
clarify what Jillian's referring to, she's saying that only in the event that the listing agent is representing both buyer and seller would, you know, this new rate be applicable. It's, you know, different than on, you know, what we saw, Jillian, in the settlement, where you can't have a variable rate to a buyer. Definitely a different scenario that you're talking about.
right, doesn't apply to listing agreements.
Right.
So just in the buyer agreement.
And
So
seemingly in the listing agreement, it would actually benefit a seller to, you know, it would be a positive change for them in that scenario.
right.
It
But
might
yeah,
be worth putting in the buyer broker agreement that the rate is zero, then in parentheses, disclose that the seller is paying the broker X%, whatever it is. So there's transparency, which is the underlying goal of this whole thing, supposedly.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Or when you send over the agreement to be signed or their copy of it, you put it in the email saying, just so you know, I am getting paid as the listing agent, you know, as you're aware, or something
Right.
of that nature. You know, Jillian, I have a question. This is where we'll end it, I believe. We talked about those four corners, the four quadrants, the compensation agreement. I've actually gotten a little bit of pushback on this from some people. Could, you know, if you're in your, you know, your accounting department and you're looking to make sure, did they check all four boxes, but, you know, they didn't have the compensation agreement, is that a deal killer?
No, it's not. So in order to authorize commission disbursement, we would look at the sales contract, and then we would look at the listing contract, and we would look at the buyer broker agreement. The compensation agreement is simply an added layer of protection to memorialize the offer, either from the listing broker to the buyer broker or the seller to the buyer broker. So really, that's where I appreciate the new addenda to the NABOR sales contract and the Florida Realtor sales contract, so that there's no question about where compensation comes from. But the thing to remember is that agents are not a party to the sales contract. So if the buyer agent is due compensation from the seller in any way, or the listing broker in any way, we used to have the MLS as our memorialization of the guarantee of the offer. We don't have that anymore. So now we just traded that for a piece of paper called a compensation agreement.